My name is Rachel. I'm 34 years old, recently divorced, and 3 weeks ago I moved into my late aunt's old house. She left it to me in her will, a big Victorian place on the edge of town. Creaky floors, dusty wallpaper, the works. I grew up visiting here, but there was one rule, always. Don't go in the guest room. It wasn't locked. There was no boogeyman story. But the rule stood. As a kid I listened. As a teenager I asked questions. My aunt would just say, "It's not for you." She passed away last winter. Peacefully. Alone. I hadn't seen her in years. Now I live here. And I can't stop looking at that door. Yesterday I opened it. Inside, a pristine room. White curtains. Clean carpet. Old furniture covered in sheets. Nothing strange. Except for the mirror. An antique full-length thing with a gold frame. Covered in symbols I couldn't read. And this morning the door was shut again. I didn't close it. I stared at the door. It was definitely shut. Not just pushed, fully latched. I stood there for a full minute before turning the knob. The room was the same. Quiet. Ill. Dust motes in the light. And the mirror unchanged. But this time when I looked at it, something felt off. It reflected the room just fine. A bed. A curtain. Me. But not exactly. My reflection was slower. When I tilted my head, it lagged a second behind. When I blinked, the reflection didn't. I laughed. Nervous. Maybe it was old glass. Or me being dramatic. I reached out. My fingertips met the cool surface. And for a moment it felt like water. Then my reflection smiled. I didn't. I yanked my hand back. The mirror showed me doing the same. Instantly. I left the room. Shut the door. This time I locked it. And I slept with the lights on. I didn't open the guest room the next day. But that night just after midnight I heard it. 3 soft knocks. Not at the front door. Not at my bedroom. At the guest room. Froze. My bedroom is down the hall. No one else lives here. I sat in bed. Blanket pulled to my chin, heart hammering. Nothing followed. No footsteps. No voices. Just silence. I finally got up, tiptoed through the hallway and stood outside the door. The knob was still locked. But as I leaned closer, trying to hear anything, I felt something. Warmth. Like someone breathing on the other side. Backed away. Went back to bed. Told myself I imagined it. Sunrise I checked again. The door was unlocked. I know I locked it. And on the mirror, written in the dust. Rachel. I didn't go to work that day. Couldn't. I spent the morning scrubbing the mirror, every inch. The name vanished, but the feeling didn't. Something was in that room. Called my mom. She sounded surprised to hear from me, but more surprised when I mentioned the guest room. "You went in?" she asked, voice tight. "Yeah." "Why?" There was a long pause. "I never told you this," she said. "But when I was little, I stayed in that room once. Just one night. And I had a dream that I woke up in the mirror. I saw myself sleeping. And then, I wasn't me." She hung up soon after. I searched the attic. I needed answers. In an old box of photo albums, I found a loose envelope. Inside, black and white photos. My aunt. My mom. And one picture I didn't recognize. Little girl. Standing in front of the mirror. Her reflection. Smiling the wrong way. On the back of the photo. Eliza. 1932, guest room. The name stuck with me. Eliza. I couldn't find her in any family trees. No mentions in my aunt's papers. Nothing in public records under the same address. But then I checked the town archives. There she was. Eliza May Hargrove, age 8. Died in 1933. Cause of death. Unknown, sudden collapse. She lived in this house. I showed the photo to the archivist. He paled. "That mirror," he whispered. "It was part of a traveling exhibit. Something occult. The Hargroves bought it at auction and returned it within a week. Said it made them sick. But Eliza, she kept sneaking back to it. After her death, the mirror vanished from public record. No resale. No disposal. 'Cause it stayed here. That night, I dreamed of the guest room. Only it wasn't dusty or old. 'Twas new. Lit by candlelight. And Eliza stood in the corner. Ill. Silent. Watching me. In the dream, she whispered. We trade places. That's the rule. I stayed out of the guest room for 2 days. Then the headache started. Not just pain, pressure. Like something was building behind my eyes. Like someone was watching from the inside out. I caught my reflection smiling at me in the kitchen window. I wasn't smiling. At night, I dreamed of the mirror again. Eliza closer this time. It's lonely, she said. But it's yours now. I woke up with a nosebleed. The next morning, the guest room door was wide open. I walked in slowly like I wasn't controlling my feet. The mirror was uncovered. In it, the room. Me. And behind me, Eliza. I spun around. Me. But in the reflection, she stayed. She lifted her hand. So did I. She stepped forward. So did I. We mirrored each other. Until she smiled. Your turn. Happened too fast. I leaned in. Eliza leaned closer. I blinked. And the world flipped. I was standing in the mirror. Not just in front of it, inside. Everything looked the same but muted. Ray. Will. Dust suspended in air that didn't move. Turned. Eliza was gone. But in the real room, the one outside, I saw someone. Me. Or her in my body. She looked around, stretched her arms and smiled. I screamed. Pounded on the glass. She didn't react. I tried to move, couldn't. The air was thick, heavy like syrup. Then she turned to the mirror. Tilted her head. And whispered. You always wanted to know what was behind the door. Now you do. She blew out the candles in the real room. One by one. The mirror darkened. And I was left inside. Time doesn't move in the mirror. I don't breathe. I don't blink. But I see. First it was just silence. My own panicked reflection staring back. Then I turned. And saw them. Shadows at first. Shaped like people but blurred like smudges on a photo. Then faces. Then voices. Some whispering. Some crying. One laughing too loud. They were all watching me. New? One of them asked. He nodded. I didn't know what else to do. Another stepped forward. Boy, maybe 12. His voice was thin. You can leave, he said. But someone else has to take your place. Like Eliza. Yes. He smiled. Eliza doesn't trade. She traps. Ran. Through a forest of glass. Doors without walls. Rooms floating in air. Everything reflected. And always the same rule. No exit without a replacement. I wandered the mirror world, searching for edges, cracks, rules. There weren't any. Time was fluid. Voices echoed in reverse. The only constant was the mirror. The real one, the one back in the guest room. I could always see it. Sometimes I even saw Eliza through it. In my body. Living my life. She talked to my coworkers. She smiled at my neighbors. She danced in the kitchen while music played. I screamed through the glass. No one heard. One of the others, a girl named Maisie, said she'd been trapped since 1971. She whispered, the mirror doesn't want just anyone. It wants believers, doubters, curious minds. That's how it lures. I asked her how she stayed sane. I didn't, she said. But then she gave me a name. Woman. Still alive. Someone who escaped. Her name's Audrey. She made a deal. I found Audrey's reflection. And she looked right at me. You want out, she asked. Then we'll need a new mirror. Audrey explained the rules. The guest mirror traps you. The new one frees you. She showed me a space. Deep in the mirror world, where the reflections start to break. Place where glass gives way to cracks. We'll build a mirror here, she said. A true one. Something not tied to Eliza. We needed 3 things. A shard from the original mirror, a name spoken from the other side, and a voluntary witness. Maisie volunteered. I've been here too long, she said. Let someone else have a chance. Audrey and I found a crack and pulled a sliver of glass free. My hand bled. It shimmered blue. Back in the waking world, Eliza, in my body, past a mirror at work. I paused. Her eyes twitched. For a second she saw me. And I said her name. That night, the mirror trembled. Audrey placed the shard into the frame she'd built. Now, she said. You just need to look. I did. And the glass opened. The mirror pulsed. Like a heartbeat. Like breath. I stepped through. It didn't feel like glass, it felt like memory. Cold. Heavy. Familiar. And then I was out. Back in my body. In the guest room. The air was thick with dust. The curtains still. My legs gave out. Across the room the mirror stood still. Inside it Eliza screamed. Her face twisted. Her hands clawed. But she couldn't reach me anymore. The rules had changed. I smashed the frame Audrey built. The glass shattered, and the mirror went dark. A final shriek echoed, then silence. Ran. Locked the room. Boarded it shut. It's been a week. The house is quiet. But sometimes in other mirrors, the bathroom, the hallway. Think I see her. Watching. Waiting. I threw out every mirror in the house. Every reflective surface. Shower glass. Microwave. My phone screen. I live in matte black and curtain-drawn silence now. But she's still here. I hear her sometimes. Laughter in the pipes. Whispers when the wind stops. One night I found condensation on the bathroom wall. In it a smear. Child's fingerprint. But I hadn't had guests in weeks. The next day I got mail addressed to Miss Eliza Hargrove. No stamp. No return address. Inside a photo. Me. Sleeping. Taken from the hallway. There's no camera in the house. I called Audrey. Told her everything. She said, "You didn't break the mirror. You broke the lock. And now something's free." I didn't sleep. Not after the letter. Not after the voice that whispered my name from inside the walls. Audrey called again. She had a plan. "There's a way," she said. "But it's not pretty. And it's not safe." We met in person. She brought chalk, salt, a mirror fragment, and a recording of Eliza's voice. "We can trap her," Audrey said. "But it has to be here. Where it started. The guest room." We drew the circle. Placed the items. Lit the candles. The air got heavy. At midnight the wall pulsed. A reflection appeared. Not mine. Not Audrey's. Eliza's. He screamed. The windows cracked. The mirror shard vibrated. Audrey chanted. I stayed inside the circle. Then everything exploded, light, glass, sound, and it was over. I woke up on the floor. The candles had burned out. The mirror shard was dust. And for the first time in weeks, the house was silent. I thought it was over. The house was still. Quiet. Clean. I slept without nightmares. I ate like I used to. I even bought a new mirror. Small, handheld. Nothing happened. Until the key fell. It dropped from the attic door while I was sweeping. Old brass. I'd never seen it before. And I remembered. There was one room I'd never opened. Behind the basement stairs. Always locked. My aunt said it was just storage. The key fit. Inside shelves, crates, dust. But also a mirror. Covered in linen. Taller than the guest rooms. And a note. In my aunt's handwriting. This one we never touched. It's older. It came first. I haven't uncovered it. Not yet. But I know it's waiting. I uncovered it. The linen fell away, heavy with dust and time. The frame was stone, not wood. Black. Cold to the touch. No reflection. Just a dark shimmer. Like oil over deep water. I whispered, "What are you?" And it answered. Not with sound, with memory. Visions flooded my mind. Cities turned to ash, mirrors in temples, faces swallowed whole. This was not just a mirror. It was a door. First door. And it had always been hungry. Backed away. Slid the linen back over it. Locked the door. I buried the key in the garden. And I left the house. Sold it. I live in a high-rise now. No antiques. No reflections larger than my palm. But sometimes in dreams. I hear the linen shifting. And something calling my name.